لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونعوذ بالله من شر أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. Today, Friday, as we know, the best day of the week. And we know why, through the grace and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, Allah's grace and mercy, by standing before you, once again, I greet you with that which the Prophet ﷺ said that we should do, as he was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I go any farther, let me say that in today's khutbah, what I deliver of all that is correct is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I make any mistakes, they are from me, and may Allah forgive me as well as you. So we know next week, the Blessed Visitor is going to return, Ramadan. And it could be just for like any other Ramadan to remind you of everything that we need to do, possibilities that could be achieved for Ramadan, and so forth. But today I want to take a different tack. I had discussed with a brother here that I'm very close to about what I was going to do the khutbah from. I had the chance to do it, inshallah. And then this morning, writing out the khutbah, it changed through Allah's grace and mercy, as it often does. SubhanAllah. So, but I want to talk about a figure and try to weave this into our preparing for Ramadan and the current state of circumstances. The person I want to talk about, his name is Yahya bin Sharif al-Na'awi. He's the compiler of a book of hadith that we've seen. We may all have it in our homes, 40 hadith. I want to take a look at this and some of the hadith from it, because what he writes about, what he's done, pertains to what we're going to do in Ramadan. The first thing you notice about the 40 hadith, there's actually 42. And all of them are muntafaqu alayh, meaning all of them are from Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So at that juncture, there is no doubt about the veracity of the 40 hadith that he brings, none whatsoever. Anytime you have a hadith that has been collected by both Sahih Bukhari, by Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, and Imam Muslim rahimahullah, it has that title or phrase, muntafaqu alayh, agreed upon by both of them. And in that case, there's no doubt about the veracity of the hadith. So all of the hadith, even though he says 40, there's 42. Okay? And they're all from Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Sheikh al-Nahwi, rahimahullah, his name, last name, is often the case from this time, indicates where he came from. He came from the village of Al-Nahwa, which is south of Damascus. So his last name reflects where he was born. He spent most of his life in Syria, 28 years in Damascus. His teacher, one of his teachers, of many that he had, his last name was Al-Maghrib. And again, that name indicates where this particular sheikh came from. He was from Al-Maghrib. Al-Maghrib at the time was a combination of present-day Libya, Tunis, Algiers, and Morocco. And Al-Maghrib here just simply meant the West as such. It was said about him, he didn't sleep a lot as a youth and studying with Al-Maghrib. He took some time to sleep, and then he was involved in different aspects of Islam in terms of study, not only hadith, but fiqh. He was said about him, he said about himself, that he was Shafi, followed Imam Shafi. He became noted as one of the most outstanding scholars of the Shafi madhab. But as with the other three individuals that we put with al-Shafi, Imam Nawawi said this, basically, any hadith that was brought to him that was shown to be sound, he accepted, even if Imam Shafi disagreed with it. This was his stance. So for him, even though he was one of the heavyweight individuals in the Shafi madhab, this was his stance. If someone brings me a hadith, they can prove that the matan, the subject of it, does not violate the text of the Quran or anything else that the Prophet ﷺ said, and the isnad, the chain of narrators, is sound. He was okay with it. He made this statement, and here I want to make a point, because we constantly in the days we'll hear about the Salafi manhaj, what it is and what it's not. But when you look at back who the Salaf were, they were the Sahaba, the men and women in that generation who saw the Prophet ﷺ, who were with him. This is a Salaf. And you don't read accounts of a Salaf doing some of the things that we see individuals who call themselves Salaf do today. We never see a circumstance of the Prophet ﷺ publicly embarrassing someone, nor did his companions. What is it that we see? The argument that took place between Bilal ibn Rabah and another Sahaba, Al-Ghifari, look at how they handled that. Abdurrahman al-Ghifari, he referred to Bilal ibn Rabah as the son of a black slave woman. So that tells us two things here. One, it was said, and two, race was a circumstance during the time of the Sahaba. Don't think that it wasn't. There are references, maybe not as we have it today, but there were references of it. And so, that al-Ghifari referred to Bilal as the son of a black slave woman. He was in earshot of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet made one statement, "Yeah, Abdullah, gone too far." That's all he said. Al-Ghifari came to Bilal, dropped down on his knees and attempted to put his foot on the back of his neck and apologized. Bilal ibn Rabah refused. He wouldn't let him do it. And he said to Al-Ghifari, "I would never place my foot up on the neck of one who sincerely believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." And then Bilal said to Al-Ghifari, "I forgave you of the words as they were coming out of your mouth." If we are going to have a successful Ramadan, These are the examples that we look at. Not seeing a brother come into the masjid and castigate him because, quote unquote, his pants may be too short or his beard may not be long enough. None of this comes from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Not at all. This aspect of referring to someone who doesn't do that or other things as being a deviant, based on what? Has that person being talked about denied his belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to have that said? This is behavior that the Sahaba, the Salaf, did not do. And yet and still, it happens. And what the individuals doing it don't understand about the cleansing of the heart, when you make a statement like that about somebody, they're deviant. It's a curse. And what do we know that the Prophet ﷺ said about curses? If you level a curse at someone and it's not justified, it floats around and it comes back on the person who said it. That is enough to not be doing that. So one of the things we need to do during Ramadan is to learn again how to forgive for the sake of Allah. And being happy that Allah has brought us to His deen, His way of life, that we have the capacity to forgive for no other reason except seeking Allah's mercy. And I'll come back to that point again. Imam al-Nawawi spent 28 years in Damascus. He died at the age of 45, which by the day's terms is not really being an elderly person. At that time, it could have been seen that way. He made this statement before his death. And it's in his book, Al-Fatawa. No, the correct choice is that which has been practiced by the Salaf, by the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And do not be deceived by the great numbers who differ from them. We'll come back to this one as well. But he said, his opinion, know that the correct choice is that which has been practiced by the Salaf, because they did what the Prophet ﷺ told them to do. And do not be deceived by the great numbers who differ from them. An-Nawawi did books of hadith as well as fiqh. In fiqh, he did Radat al-Talibin, the Talibin, 12 volumes. He did a book called Al-Minhaj, Al-Majmu'. His books on hadith. He did a book in Arabic called Sharh Sahih Muslim, the explanations, word Sharh means explanation, the explanation of Sahih Muslim and the commentary. He also did on one book that some of us are familiar with. I, for myself, need to become more familiar with, Riyad al-Salihin. And now, collection of hadith relating to Iman and the relationship with Allah Ta'ala and righteous conduct. He did another book called Al-Athqar. This book is just a compilation of dua to make to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so during this month of Ramadan, we are encouraged to do what? To do more of, to sincerely pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here, for myself first, it's not simply talking about praying Salatul Tarawih, or the five, or the Sunnah. It means taking those precious times and moments that Allah gives to seek His mercy and His forgiveness during this special month. That if we've fallen away from doing that, in happiness, joyfulness, we dedicate ourselves to doing that. So the Al-Afkar, this book Al-Afkar, is just supplications for different circumstances to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he did the book Al-Rabiyun, or Al-Bab. In Arabic, the word Arba'in, Arba'un, means 40. And so the title for his book was just that, the 40. But here it becomes important for us to understand what pushed him to do it. There's a hadith from Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abdullah ibn Masud, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Abu Hurairah, Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, Anas ibn Malik, reading these names, these are some of the most noted of the Sahaba. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the fourth Khalifa. Abdullah ibn Masud, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Abu Hurairah, Abi Sa'id ibn al-Khudri. They said from the Prophet ﷺ that the Prophet ﷺ said, let us listen carefully. Whoever preserves for my nation 40 hadith, whoever preserves for my nation 40 hadith concerning its religion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect him on the day of judgment among the jurists and scholars. Abu Darda, in the narration said, the Prophet said, I will be for him, that person, on the day of resurrection, an intercessor and a witness. Ibn Masud, in the narration that he gave, he said that individuals will be told, enter by any of the doors of paradise. Any of them. Enter into by any one of the doors of paradise. How many of us, subhanAllah, will we not give anything, everything, to be in that circumstance? To stand before our Creator on Yom Kippur and be told that He's pleased with us. Enter by any door of paradise that you will. You see, if that is what we want, then we have to do the actions to get us there. And Ramadan is a place to start, individually and collectively. Now, here comes curve. This hadith, amongst scholars of hadith, is da'if, is weak. However, there's not a problem, as muhaddithin have talked about, taking a da'if hadith and doing a righteous deed with it. Sheikh Nasruddin Albani, rahimahullah, who passed away in our times in the 20th century, I don't know everything, but I know he was one of the greatest scholars of hadith to live. And he talked about this. But how did this affect them now? He made, as he says in his introduction, he made istikhara about pursuing his book, The 40 Hadith. And again, a reminder for us during this month of Ramadan, if we don't understand and know the value of istikhara, then we need to find out about the value of istikhara. Not only its value, but how it should be performed. Because mistakenly, many of us think that in performing istikhara, seeking Allah's guidance, that we're going to get wahy, revelation. That's not the case. Why revelation stopped with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you pray istikhara and recite the dua. It's after you've made the decision to pursue it, a course of action. And now you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if that course of action that you've chosen is for the betterment of your faith, i.e., your Islam and your being Muslim, then allow it to happen. And if not, then He keeps it away from us. There's some ikhtilaf about how many times istikhara should be prayed about a specific matter. Some scholars say, shuyukh, more than once. Some say only once. And if you decided to do something, you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that, to take a trip, you do everything. Buy tickets, get your passport in order, pack your clothes, and you don't go. Your istikhara has been answered. Your istikhara has been answered. Because Allah, for whatever reasons He has chosen, has deemed that it's better for you not to go. And from that standpoint, in Ramadan, getting back to understanding that when we say MashaAllah kana, it's not just a phrase. It's saying that we truly accept what Allah has rendered. Period. So all of these things, Allah in His mercy has given us the 9th month of the lunar calendar, Ramadan, that we can achieve. And instead of being, oh my God, Ramadan, gotta go without eating for 30 days. Okay, fine. But notice, when the prophets of Islam, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we're not willing to work on our shortcomings, our inconsistencies, to draw closer to Allah, He says He doesn't need us to give up our food. So if we aren't going to be about that, then don't fast. And you look at me and say, how could you say that? I can say that because Allah has said, if we aren't going to work on the things that we know that we are deficient in, individually and collectively, He doesn't need us to give up our food. So for Imam Nawawi, about writing the book, what we call the 40 Hadith, he made istiqara to do the book and then proceeded to do the things necessary to accomplish it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him to do so. He wasn't the only one who did a compilation of 40 Hadith. He may have been the only one from the standpoint of what he did in praying istikhara, and that's not condemning the others. Because as I said, the hadith was shown to be da'if, but what was produced, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them for it. The statement that An-Nawawi used to go forth with what he did in writing the hadith is a sound hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. What the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, may Allah make radiant the face of a person who heard my statement, understood it, and passed it on as he heard it. From the Prophet ﷺ, may Allah make radiant the face of a person who heard my statement, the statements, understood it, and passed it on as he heard it. Now, one of the things we have to understand about this hadith, he said person. So that person could be male or female and fit into this category. One of the things I hope that we can discover during Ramadan is the tremendous female scholars of hadith as an inspiration to us all. Not all of the compilers of hadith were men. Besides Abu Hurairah, who narrated more hadith from the Prophet ﷺ than anybody else. Aisha radiallahu anha. The same with the memorization of the Quran. It brings your heart to tears sometimes if you're on YouTube and you see a little girl, 5 years old, and she's hafiz of Quran. In Egypt, one person said to me that the number of women in Egypt who are hafiz of Quran outnumber the number of men. So here in this hadith, it doesn't say a male person, it says a person. What could it be for us, a Masjidun-Nur, if that child right there could be the person that Allah is talking about, that this little girl can be in an environment where she accomplishes those three things. SubhanAllah. In An-Nawawi's 40 hadith, you will notice some of the hadith, like the very first one in the collection, is referred to as the fulcrum of Islam. These 40 hadith he chose, he said that he wanted them to be unlike the others, but to point strictly more to those things of the greatest importance: intention, iman, and the things that we have to do to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Nawawi said, Islam is built around three basic things. And he took this from the hadith of the Prophet from Al-Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal. The first one, and this hadith is in the collection, was narrated by Umar ibn al-Khattab. And it's the one where, in the khutbah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me to give, I said, take yourselves back to Medina, at this particular time. The Prophet is sitting with his companions. And this person shows up, looking to be a man. We all know the hadith. It was Angel Jibreel, alayhi salam. And in that hadith, he covered every aspect of what it means to believe in Islam. So, Imam Nawawi said, that the three major aspects about Islam from this hadith, these are but by intention. Deeds are but by intention. Here meaning, if a deed is to be done, it needs to be done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala solely. From Aisha, the second hadith, whoever, from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whoever introduces something not from this matter of ours, it will be rejected. Here she's talking about bid'ah. And here we have to be careful. Some, you know the hadith concerning fasting in Ramadan. You begin to fast when you can discern the light red of dawn from the dark. And you end it, sun passes below the horizon. And here the thing to realize is, when the Prophet ﷺ told his companions that some strange, not strange, some things happened. One Sahaba, he tried to look at the hair on his leg to distinguish the light ones from the dark ones. Another one had two pieces of string. He was trying to figure out what that was. And the Prophet ﷺ told him, no, that's not what it's meant. You distinguish the light through the dawn from the dark. So here, when a person says, whoever that person may be, oh, you need to stop eating 45 or half hour before Fajr. No. That is not from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Hadith is clear. But yet some people will do that religiously, having no proof from the Prophet ﷺ. And if you have no proof from the Prophet ﷺ about a thing to do in Islam, that's where this hadith from Aisha comes in. You introduce something into this matter of ours that's not from it, it will be rejected. And this is what we have to be careful of. The third hadith is from An-Numan bin Bashir in the 40 hadith. And it's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, what is halal is clear and what is forbidden is clear. And then again in that, you need to pay close attention. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر وأتوب إليه أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala khayril mursaleen ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. To show you the importance of these three hadith that Anna will put in his 40 hadith. The first one from Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. Imam Bukhari begins his Sahih with this hadith. Imam Muslim, rahimahullah, he concludes his book, his chapter in his Sahih on jihad with this hadith from Umar ibn al-Khattab. Imam al-Shafi said there's 70 subjects of fiqh in the hadith from Umar. Contains a third of the knowledge. Ramadan is a time for purifying the heart. We should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for having the chance and the opportunity to do so. But hopefully what I will share with you next will make it more important that we do this individually and collectively. Imam Bayhaqi, radiallahu anhu, not radiallahu anhu, rahmatullah, and others said this: a servant of Allah earns and requires things, his mercies and his blessings through his heart, his tongue, and his limbs. Intention being one of the three. So the intent here again has to be purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It can't be that I'm seeking forgiveness for praying to Allah and someone else, only to Allah. Every deed has to be solely for the sake of Allah, large or small. And there's a discussion about this that we need to understand. Imam Nawawi said that niyyah, intention of the heart, serves two purposes. One, to define the act or the worship intended. So the niyyah, it just can't be helter-skelter. If we're fasting for the Ramadan, then the niyyah has to be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then to discern that the act being performed can be considered and is one of worship. Fasting, Ramadan, is a pillar. Because in this 40 hadith, and now we put together the hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, Buni al-Islam ala khams. Buni al-Islam ala khams. Islam is built on 5. and Ramadan being one of the 5, and we know the others. He then said this. Listen very carefully. Quote, "The believer's intentions are always better than his deeds." The believer's intentions are always better than his deeds. And on the flip side, he says, the unbelievers, their deeds are always better than their intentions. What does he mean here? What Imam Nawawi is talking to, that sometimes the person who's truly striving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they do something that none of us ever notice. It may be giving a smile when they give salams to a person. It may be moving an object off of the street for someone not to trip over. And we look at that as being small. But if they've done this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely, the reward that they receive is larger than if they did something that everybody noticed. And with the unbelievers, in this life, unless they come to Islam, they can do good deeds, and any reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to give them is in this life. And some will argue with me about that. But it's clear from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. In this life, in the afterlife, So, Imam Nawawi says this. Every believer is a Muslim, but not every Muslim is a believer. Every believer is a Muslim, but not every Muslim is a believer. And he says this because I will read this to you from Ibn Taymiyyah to explain it. He who is determined to abandon sins during the month of Ramadan, but not in any other month, again, he who is determined to abandon sins during the month of Ramadan and not in any other month, that person is not from those who have repented absolutely. However, he or she is someone who has abandoned the actions during the month of Ramadan, and inshallah, they will be rewarded for doing so during the month of Ramadan. For that, if abandoning sins is for Allah and magnifying the signs of Allah and avoiding his prohibitions during the time of Ramadan, and they're sincere about it, they will receive the blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Allah so chooses. However, he states, he or she is not from those who repented and will be forgiven with absolute forgiveness. Why? Because the month ends And whoever those individuals are, and I hope they're not from amongst us, go back to doing the things that violates Allah's prohibitions. And this is why Ibn Taymiyyah said, every believer who's reached that status through the grace and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Muslim. But not every Muslim is a believer. In the terms of receiving that absolute forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the things that we have to do, and Imam Radi, Jazakallahu khair, he's talked about this, staying with the Jama'at. The Jama'at is Masjidun-Nur. Staying with it, working in it, producing in it, sharing in it. I bring this up because the Prophet ﷺ gave a hadith. I'm going to qualify this hadith by saying, during the time that many places in the world were under the rule of the Sharia, something that he calls for in there could be done. But in this environment where we are, the Sharia is not in place. And we can't do the one thing that he mentions in this hadith. But he gives important advice for us to understand and for us to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the month of Ramadan that individually and collectively we're protected from. The Prophet ﷺ in this hadith narrated and said that after he would be gone, there would be great calamity that would affect his ummah. And he said, persons who attempt to divide my ummah, kill them. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the persons who attempt to divide and destroy my ummah, kill them. So during the time when the Sharia was in place in many places, that could be carried out. Can't do that here, but we can be aware. But he went on to say this, the hand of Allah is with the Jama'ah. The hand of Allah is with the Jama'ah. The hand of Allah is with the Jama'ah. And the shaitan is with the ones who split away from the ummah or from the Jama'ah. Shaitan is the one who is with the one who splits away from the ummah and is running alongside of him or her. So what does one gain if they split away from the Jama'ah? This month of Ramadan, this blessed month, let it be that we come back to the Jama'ah, that we come back to this Jama'ah and not be in a circumstance of causing fitna and problems. Because if that's the case, and pray that none of us here would do that, but for those who would, Shaitan is running with them. So, we are approaching this blessed month. It's one of the aspects about An-Nawr in this 40 hadith I want to share. It's the 4th hadith in the collection. And it talks about, and it scared the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, because in this hadith he talks about the formation of the human being in the mother's womb. What happens during the course of 120 days. And we know sperm, congealed clot, the aspect of it looking like morsel of flesh. The angel comes, he writes down person's livelihood, their risk, their actions, and their end. When the Sahaba heard this, because what the Prophet ﷺ was saying is that, and this that's laid out for them, it will talk about what it is they will do and what they won't do. Umar ibn al-Khattab again narrated a hadith from Aisha dealing with this subject. And in this hadith, the 4th hadith in An-Nawr, the Prophet ﷺ says, a person will be doing so much, and it looks like they become within a hand's breadth of paradise. The decree overtakes them, and they become a citizen of the hellfire. The opposite, a person doing so much wrong, they seek Allah's forgiveness, they are within a hand's breadth of the hellfire, the decree overtakes them, and through Allah's grace and mercy, they achieve paradise. The Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, if that's the case, why should we do anything? Should we not just wait? Our time comes, ends, because the decree is going to overtake us anyway. Prophet ﷺ in essence said, yeah, but which decree? You don't know. We don't know. And going back to the 4th hadith, this is what An-Nawr was talking about. That if the intent is to please Allah solely, Allah will not take us away from doing those things that gets us to the point of receiving His mercy. But if, to use an old vernacular, we shucking and jiving, like Allah doesn't know that our hearts was in our hearts, we can be fooled. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can. And then something happens, and that thing overtakes the person, and they end up going to their death. And this is what An-Nawr is talking about, the capstone on the actions. How do we end our lives? Will it be seeking Allah's pleasure alone, which allows us to continue in doing that and drawing closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or, as was said, every Muslim, every believer is a Muslim, but every Muslim is not a believer. So in this month of Ramadan, and here, I'm not the aspect about doom and gloom. That's not what this is about. This is about recognizing and giving thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala joyfully and openly for having the opportunity to observe this month that's coming, the blessed visit of being here. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا قوم الكافرين أقيم الصلاة. 9.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح وقامت الصلاة وقامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم